Hi, my name is Leo Young. Today I'm joined by my friend and mentor in the industry, Matt Gardner. He's got an incredible background that I think you all would get lots of great insights out of. Hey Matt, how's it going?
What's up, Leo? Thanks for having me, man. Always good
Of
to chat with you.
course, of course, yeah. I'll give a brief background on you first, and feel free to expand on it. Matt, he's one of the youngest F-35 stealth fighter jet pilots out there. He's an incredible pilot. He was one of the, I guess he was in the equivalent of the Air Force Top Gun program, right? And he's had a career in the military before transitioning to real estate through an unforeseen circumstance. So he was diagnosed with cancer, with lymphoma. Scary stuff. And he was given 48 hours to live, underwent emergency surgery and chemo, and fortunately he beat it. And he saw the light, so to speak. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then he went into the real estate industry swinging. So he sold $100 million in real estate in his first 2 years as a full-time agent, and now he runs a successful team of agents. Now, he also runs an investment firm with 70 plus million in AUM with a couple other partners who are also friends of mine. And he's also got other investments of his own. On top of all of that, he's also a husband and a father of four, and he's under 40. So that was an entire rap sheet for a lifetime, let alone under 40. Now he's written a book for investor agents, so agents who invest and who can also bring their career to the next level. So, yeah, hopefully I covered that and did you some justice.
Yeah, man, it's always interesting when people read your accolades in the military. That was one of the things you get awards randomly. In the military when you PCS, people they try to fluff you up for awards when you're getting ranked up, and it's always uncomfortable sometimes just to sit there and have people talk about you. But I don't know, it's part of life, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. All good. So yeah, that's a quick summary on Matt. He's a good friend of mine and a mentor in the industry. As I said, he's a wealth of knowledge. And in today's session, I want to dig in a little deeper on his story. What makes him tick. Go beyond the surface level because that's where the real nuggets are. And hopefully you get lots out of it. But first and foremost, so where did the name Roar come about?
I get that quite often. It's funny coming from the military, having like a second name or a call sign, what we call it in the Air Force, is pretty common. So I rarely get that question. But in the civilian sector now, everyone's always like, "Do I call you Roar? Like, do I call you Matt? What do I call you?" I'm like, half the people in my life who are military, who knew me from the military, call me Roar. And the other half who've known me outside the military call me Matt. So basically, you can call me either. But yeah, Roar is my call sign, just like in Top Gun, Maverick or Goose or Iceman, any of those. Those are call signs in the military, especially in military aviation. That's actually a thing that we do. And it was derived from, you either get a call sign for doing something really awesome or doing something really dumb and silly. And luckily, I did something great to get mine, but it's an acronym. So mine stands for Rounds on a Raptor. It's ROAR. And because when I was flying F-15s, I was dogfighting a Raptor, an F-22, which is they're like the jock of the fighters, the best of the best in terms of like air-to-air combat. And I was able to gun a Raptor. And so because I've got rounds on a Raptor, that's what it stands for.
Nice. That's honestly the first time I've heard that. So
Yeah.
very cool. I love it, man. And speaking of that, I mean, that obviously required a lot of precision and focus and all that stuff. And just sort of moving on to like your real estate career. I mean, you've achieved like remarkable growth. I mean, 100 million in 2 years. That's a lot. For the people that don't know, that's a lot. But I mean, you doing that, I know you've sort of compared that in your book to going full throttle, so to speak, in the Air Force. Can you sort of like walk us through how you accomplished that and, maybe what made your approach different than other people?
Yeah, yeah. You got to attribute some of it to luck and timing, to be honest with you. Like, to be completely frank, I got my real estate license in end of 2018. I didn't start selling full time until 2020. I was kind of part-time agent-ish while I was still in the military as an aviator. And when I came full-time in 2020, that's when the pandemic hit, which everyone was freaked out about. But very soon after, we realized it was a bull market and everyone wanted to buy properties, right? And so timing was a huge aspect of it. But not every agent in 2020, 2021 was selling 50 million a year. You know what I mean? So I think for me personally, one of the reasons that I think I had such success was I focused on helping investors. I focused on the clients that I wanted to have repeat business, but not the classic repeat business as a real estate agent where if I help Leo buy a house and he's a typical civilian that goes and buys a house and every 5 to 7 years he might upgrade. You know what I mean? Like that kind of cycle was just too long for me. I didn't have the patience for that. And so I looked into the investing side, and investors are looking to acquire or dispose of their properties. Like at any given time, they're trying to either grow or get rid of it based on whatever reason. And so from an agent perspective, the transaction count can be huge because you're just able to help these investors who are just like, all right, if you treat them well, it's not just one deal. It's multiple deals that you're going to get out of a single investor by having a great relationship there.
Nice, nice. I love it.
Yeah.
So more so going in a niche market that is paying well, so to speak, right? It's like selling shovels in a gold rush.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, where I was located at the time was Destin, Florida, and selling in Destin, Florida in 2020 when interest rates were low and real estate was less expensive than it is now, and the short-term rental boom was just beginning. STRs were the hottest commodity at the time, and so everyone and their mother was trying to buy an Airbnb. For multiple reasons. The pandemic had issues with it. Government was printing free money. Money was cheap, and it was the hot topic on the big investor forums as well. And so the stars aligned in that regard, and it was great. And I rode the rush as long as I could.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, Matt, that for you, you had a somewhat unique way of marketing, right? It's not like just you sending emails twice a year reminding your clients to dial their clocks back for daylight savings, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
have to go in through different ways and
yeah.
all that stuff. So did you have like some sort of approaches that you found out was effective, and like how did you find that? Was it through experimentation, listening to others?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the first thing for me when you're going to be working within a niche, especially like investors. You have to have that foundational education first. You need to speak the language. In the military, when you jump into the military, you have this like military lingo, the jargon of the military that you kind of hear about, and then you jump into like military aviation. There's more specific lingo you learn within sort of military aviation terms, and then you jump into the world of fighter pilots, where there's even more specific acronyms and just ways of speaking that you have to understand. And the same thing is true in real estate. Like when you join real estate, you can talk broad terminology, broad education in terms of real estate knowledge, but then you jump into investing, and then there's the next level of, all right, well, let's talk about ROI. Let's talk about what is your cash flow here, more general investor terms. But then you can niche down even further to the specific, what is the ADR for this short-term rental? What is the IRR of this multifamily? So like average daily rate or internal rate of return. And once you start talking these more specific terminologies, and you're dealing with these investors, they trust you even more, and you're able to add value, and which is really the key in the end. So that first step was the education piece that I knew I needed, so I could speak the language. It's like if I wanted to go to France, I need to at least learn some basic lingo before I get out there to try to survive. And so after you have the knowledge, for me, the next step was then networking. And so, like you said, I wasn't a fan of the traditional marketing techniques of farming a neighborhood and putting my house on bus benches outside and whatever. I'm just not a fan of the traditional kind of model. And so I attended as many local meetups as I could. Investor meetups, they're everywhere. Real estate investing associations, and did a lot of belly to belly networking with investors. But on top of that, at the time, my networking and my marketing expanded to online real estate investing forums. And so I would jump onto websites like BiggerPockets or in specific investor groups on Facebook that really focused on investors. and I would just jump in there and add value. I'd see someone like if you were to say, hey, I'm interested, I'm thinking about buying a condo in Destin for a short-term rental. I don't know, what are you guys' thoughts? That'd be like a common post. And I would just jump in there. And I would just say, hey man, yeah, I bought 2 last week. Here's how the numbers are working out. Watch out for this. And I wouldn't even sell myself as an agent. I was just out there adding value. And I would just always throw out the nugget of, I do sell in the area. If you have any questions, let me know. But if not, happy to help you with, either way. And oftentimes people just reach out and say, hey man, thanks for adding value. Do you have more room for more clients? And so that was those 2 techniques of belly networking as well as the online forums.
Love it. And this sounds very familiar to what you're saying in your books as well, right?
Yeah.
I know you broke it down in your book to a few different chapters of key things that that investor agents can work on. So like learning the lingo, networking, and all that such.
Yep.
I guess like for you, right? I mean, I know you mentioned luck earlier as well, and luck is sort of like what separates the good from the great. Like hard work is the entry point to being good, but to become great, you need a little bit of luck, So I guess what was your work schedule like during your early days? How did you stay motivated?
Yeah. I always like the phrase, I can't remember who said it. I want to say Henry Ford, but someone said, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? And so I say I'm lucky because I prepared myself when the situations arose. I was able to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And the work, man, I thought I worked hard as a fighter pilot. 12 to 14-hour days. We'd be in these top secret vaults, studying tactics, out flying missions, debriefing. And I did work a lot as a pilot, as a fighter pilot. And now as a real estate agent, especially as a new real estate agent, when I got out trying to start this business from the ground up, it was nonstop, man, to be honest with you. I had a conversation with my wife after we got out of the military going full-time real estate. I said, hey, baby, like, if I'm going to do this, I need like a year or 2 of me just kind of fully committed to this and intentionally like imbalancing my life in the direction of work and kind of foregoing some of these other aspects, the more traditional aspects of being a good dad, being a good spouse. And I kind of had to forego it for a little bit, which is not a common thing you hear, right? People are like, well, you got to have the balance. And I just think it's very difficult to truly have a work-life balance and have an extremely successful business from the ground up. You look at any of these great entrepreneurs, and at any point in the early stages, they talk about that fanatical stage that they went through in order to build their business. So early on, it was nonstop, man. I'd wake up early, 4 or 5 in the morning sometimes. I was a Miracle Morning guy at the time, so it was get up super early, do my little Miracle Morning routine, and then I would just study the market. I'd follow up with these blogs. I'd follow up with my clients. I initially hired an assistant soon enough, and so she was showing properties while I was doing these analysis and these buyer calls and these listing presentations. And it was just a full cycle thing from call it 4 or 5 in the morning till 10 at night. It was a lot.
Wow, that's incredible, and I think you hit on a very important point there, Matt. That it's almost necessary for people to go imbalanced, right? I mean, we hear a lot about like work-life balance, but that's like sort of very misunderstood. There is a correct proportion for every time in life. It's not always like 50-50 or something like that. And the people that do the 50-50, 40 hours a week, they'll get very average results, if not slightly below, because in a field like what you're in, it's very competitive. People work hard, and like, how do you stand out from others? So I think it's important that you had that conversation, with your wife on just going full throttle, right? Or the afterburner, as you say.
Yeah, like in the book, I equate it to taking off with an airplane. Because if you imagine you're taking off on a large passenger jet, and the pilot kind of puts his throttles halfway up, and doesn't use full throttle. And by the time you get to the end of the runway, you're not going to have enough energy to even get off the ground. Like, you've not exerted enough energy to get off the ground in a timely manner. You're going to crash. You're going to have to abort the takeoff. And then there's like the pilots who kind of go full throttle, and they at the end of the runway they'll start to climb. They'll slowly get up there, and eventually they get to altitude. Right? It might take some time, but they'll eventually get to the financial altitude they're trying to get to. But my methodology was like, man, screw this. I'm a fighter pilot. I'm going to go past full throttle. I'm going to go afterburner, which for those of you who don't know, what afterburner is basically in a jet engine, there's the normal engine like you see in the airliners, but a jet engine in the back for fighter jets, afterburners, they just basically have nozzles where they just pour extra gas in the back. So you have the normal combustion chamber, but then in the back, it just dumps as much fuel as possible. So it's very inefficient in terms of fuel, but man, you get an extra 30%, 40%, 50% of power sometimes, and you get that kick in the pants, and you can just, rather than taking off slowly, right, you're there, you take off, and you just go straight up. And that was the goal. So I was like, baby, give me a year or two of this. I know I'm going to be burning the candle on both ends, if you will, but once we get up here, you can then level off and kind of pull the throttles back and then have a little bit more balance. Even in the other direction, right? There's times now I intentionally balance my family life over the work, and I'm able to do that now, which is great.
That's interesting, yeah. And it really goes down to energy and momentum, right? You know, it takes a lot. I mean, as you know, like physics and all that such, like flying planes, like it takes a lot of effort to take off. But also to gain that momentum in business, it's almost harder because like there's so many unknowns that it's like hard to learn how to grow your business before like you do it versus like a plane has its manuals and all that such, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have frameworks. You have people who have done it before, right? I definitely leaned on some specific mentors. You know, you talked about mentors in the business. I think they're super important to have coaches and mentors to understand people who are 2 steps ahead of you, 10 steps ahead of you, 100 steps ahead of you, so you can see what mistakes they've made, so you can hopefully not make those mistakes. You can hopefully learn that the pot's hot without touching it, you know what I mean? But yeah, momentum in real estate is definitely real. Also in the side of investing or sales, really, whichever way you want to go about it. It's an interesting thought process because, I mean, Leo, you're a great example where you've done this great job of like building this brand, this awareness of what you're doing, and you've probably noticed the more success that you're starting to accumulate, all of a sudden people are like, oh, Leo, I heard about this deal, or hey man, like the more success you have, people see you're successful, so then they want to go to you with these opportunities, and like you become the snowball effect of like you just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's hard to once you stop that momentum, like all of a sudden people stop going to you as much. And so like you really, if you're trying to build, you got to take advantage of the momentum while you have it, because the moment you stop, you got to start again, and it's that big heavy push to start that momentum again.
Yep, totally. You're absolutely right, and it takes a lot of effort to get going, but for people wanting sort of balance, right? They just have to understand like, you know, what's at the end of that tunnel of balance and the cost for them. Which I guess leads into my next question. Like, as you sort of scaled your business, your operations, how did you sort of manage that workload? Did you? I know you mentioned an assistant. When did you sort of like outsource and delegate those tasks? And did you like have a process to train those people to like delegate them to monitor their progress or something like that?
Yeah, this is delegation's always interesting. As you grow, you get to the point where you can only do so much in a 24-hour time period, right? And people are like, "Wow, man, if someone gave you 10 amazing deals right now, like 10 amazing mobile home parks, you'd be like, that's great, but I physically can't buy them all right now. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm gonna have to like wholesale some of these to somebody else because I can't do it." And so as you grow, you'll find out these points, the weak points, your bottlenecks in your business, where you're like, all right, this is my bottleneck. I need to fix this bottleneck first because clearly this is my biggest limiting factor right now. And so, I don't know, early on as an investor, it might be I just can't analyze deals fast enough. So I need to find a partner or I need to find an outlet to help me analyze these deals. For me as an agent, my limiting factor was showing houses early on. And so I had to find an assistant who could be out there dealing with the traffic, dealing with the houses, dealing with coordinating locks and combos and timing and all that. The moment I was able to offload that first, that just gave me so much more time back. You know, I wasn't in the car nearly as much. I sold, you know, out of the 50 million I sold the first year, you know, I probably showed 75% of the houses. But the next year, I probably showed 10% of the houses. Like 90% of the houses I've never even stepped in. A lot of my clients I've never met in person. And I don't say that to be like, hey, look at me, like I don't meet my clients. I still have great relationships with my clients. I just didn't meet them in person. A lot of my clients were remote anyways, and they didn't even see the houses before they bought them. You know, my assistant would just go out there and do video tours for them. So assistant was definitely the first one, because having a general personal assistant is like the catch-all, right? Like, you're my assistant, so you're gonna do whatever I need you to do. And it was a interesting process to teach her, like you were saying, how do you train somebody? At first, it was just on the job training, like, hey, here's how I do it. Show me you know how to do it. It's the crawl, walk, run mentality of like, all right, I'm going to show you. You're going to do it with me monitoring you, and then you're going to do it on your own. And that was the initial process. And then as we got too busy of just her showing houses and me doing all the back office and interaction with the clients in the backside, the next one was a coordinator to handle all the paperwork. I'm definitely a type A personality who does not like minutia and details. And so, when it comes to making sure that I have the appropriate form initialed here, and then it's uploaded to these 3 systems that you need to be uploaded to, I'm like, nah, I don't want to deal with all that. And so offloading that was a big key for me, just because my personality doesn't really, like, I always held that till last. So it was the assistant first, followed up by the coordinator. And then after that, it was really just, it was a pretty well-run machine, but there were still too many leads for me to handle personally. So that's when the team started growing, of getting more agents on the team, of like, all right, man, like, I have 100 leads right now, and I don't have the ability to follow up with all of them. I don't want to just not monetize them because I can't follow up. So, hey, Leo, you want to join my team and help me tackle some of these leads? We'll just, here's the split. Does this sound good? Sweet. And we kind of went from there. That was kind of the initial progression.
Nice. So, yeah, I mean, you highlighted the importance of just letting go and delegating, because I know a lot of people out there, especially agents, who are independent contractors, they just have this mindset that only they can do the work. And like, the assistant can't do as good of a listing presentation as he can. So like, a lot of people have challenges letting go. And I guess for you, is there like did you ever feel that like ego need to like, I need to control this? Or was it like something that you were okay from the get-go? Like, okay, I'll just hire it out.
I had to have confidence that they were going to do their job well, for sure. My first assistant, she was really exactly what I needed at the time. And she was a spouse of a military member in the local area. She didn't have any kids, so her time was completely flexible. Her husband was the main breadwinner, and she was interested in real estate, but she had no other obligations, basically. So she was the perfect like cog in the wheel that I needed. I was like, perfectly fit. And so because she was so flexible and my schedule was so crazy, sometimes I'd have her work at 6 a.m. Other times she'd be up at midnight working, like whatever it was super duper flexible. But in order for me to trust what she was doing, we kind of needed that crawl, walk, run mentality. And so she shadowed me, I shadowed her, to make sure everything was comfortable there. And then eventually she was just doing it on her own, because I've seen her do enough good work, and it worked out really well. Yeah. But you have to have that trust, absolutely.
Yeah, trust is super important. And that sort of flows into, I guess, like for you, going through that intense period. What are sort of like certain like mindsets or habits that you sort of developed along the way that helped you stay focused and driven, through all these like challenges, the ups and downs of brokering real estate?
Yeah, man, it was a difficult decision, deciding to go full-time real estate from your traditional secure job in the military, right? I was a salaried employee as a pilot in the military, check 1st and 15th of the month or whatever it was. And to go from that to 100% salary to then 100% performance-based pay, it's a scary thought. And so I had to really have the mindset of that I'm confident this can happen. And one of the things that I did to make that happen was talk to investors, go to these events, talk to these coaches who have done it, and just realize these people who were, millionaires or people making consistent 6 figures, they're just normal people. And some of them you meet, they're like slightly below average people. You know what I mean? I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. I had that mentality of like, if John over here is able to sell, make $1 million a year in real estate, I can make $1 million a year in real estate. I know I can do that. And so that confidence of like, all right, like these aren't like special people out there who are making $1 million a year. Like these are just normal people who are just know how to work. They're working efficiently. They're working smartly. And I can do that. I'm a smart dude. I can make that happen. And so early on, it was that belief, that belief that it could even happen was really the first step. And then after that, I mean, I was hooked on reading, to be honest with you. Early on, it was a lot of personal development books, a lot of mindset books, and a lot of books on real estate investing, real estate knowledge, just so I had the knowledge piece, but I also had like that foundation of a solid mindset going forward, was really big for me.
Definitely. And speaking of reading, I mean, your book is sort of geared towards like, someone like in your position, right? I mean, you sort of written this for like the beginner Matt that, he never had this book, right? You sort of share your lessons and all that such.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a book that I think will help agents who are in a position where they're like, I'm just not sure. Maybe they're doing the more traditional retail agent struggle, and they're not really seeing traction there. Or even for agents who are maybe seeing consistent business, but they're just like, man, how do I take it up another level? Like, what can I do to really increase my game? And even the agents who are successful and not even trying to increase their sales on the retail side, a lot of agents are just really ignorant in the investing space. And I don't mean that like in a negative connotation. I just mean like in general, they just don't know about investing. And it's super surprising. Like when I got my license and I went to my very first real estate investing course through my local real estate agent association. So it was like this official real estate agent is a broker who was teaching a class on real estate investing. Man, I was stoked. I was like, all right, this is it. Because up until then, I was reading books, I was listening to podcasts, I was on Bigger Pockets, and I was like, all right, I think I know what's going on. I got some pretty good foundation, but this was going to be it. I got an official person who's a real estate broker going to teach me this course, man. It's going to be cool. And I get there, and they're just floundering over their words. And like the people in the class who have been selling real estate for 10, 20, 30 years, they didn't know half the stuff. And halfway through the course, I vividly remember, it was a 4-hour course. About 2 hours in, she was confusing the terms cash flow and cap rate. And so she would say things like, well, the cap rate here is $300 a month and the cash flow is 8%. I was like, just like, I couldn't hold my tongue. So I was like, just to clarify, cap rate's a percentage and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of explain it. Cash flow's this. And I would explain it. She's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I always confuse those two. And so I would then like correct her a couple more times over the next half hour, 40 minutes or so. And it got to the point where she was like, you know what, Matt, how about you come up here for the next one and you just teach the next example. And so I was like, all right. I had got my license 2 weeks prior. I was like, I'm not a experienced agent, but I understand the investing side. And so I jumped up there and I ended up teaching the last like hour and a half, 2 hours of the course, because it was just going over examples of real estate investing options. And that really surprised me a ton. And that is really kind of a good example of the real estate industry at large with agents. A lot of people just don't understand investing, and it's just such a core foundation that every agent should know.
For sure. I mean, it's like a car salesman that doesn't know what car he's selling, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like buying a Lamborghini from a guy who sells bicycles. You're like, okay, you might understand how vehicles move forward, but I'm not going to trust what you're trying to sell here, man.
Exactly. So why do you think that is, though? I mean, like there's so many agents, but like so little know about the investing side or like even want to be in there.
I think there's a bit of a negative connotation within the real estate investing space amongst agents. A lot of agents will get spammed by real estate investors, and I think the face of real estate investing is wholesalers, to be honest with you. And a lot of wholesalers will go to a 2-day seminar and they're going to be like, I'm going to make $1 million wholesaling. Let me put out all my bandit signs. I'm going to call every agent, tell them, hey, I'm looking for distressed properties. Let me sell. I'm going to make 100 cash offers that are 50% below list price to this weekend. And so from the perspective of the real estate agent, they see these wholesalers that are constantly spamming them with just ridiculously low cash offers that if they submit an actual offer, like you're obligated to then go talk to your client and say, hey, Mr. Seller, I got another offer that's $200,000 below. Like, do you want to consider it? They're like, no, I don't. Okay, sweet, thank you. Like, let me go back. And so they're kind of viewed, wholesalers kind of broadly. I have some great wholesaler friends, but broadly, wholesalers put a little bit of a negative connotation in terms of real estate investing to agents. And the other piece is some investors can be a little bit cheap when it comes to commissions and like being willing to commit to agents, and so they feel like they kind of sleep around with agents, if you will. I don't mean like specific physically, but they kind of shop around agents in different areas, and agents like to be exclusive as much as they can. And so when you have a client who's not willing to commit to you personally, some agents just don't want to deal with it. So there's a little bit of a pushback, and I understand there's some truth to those things, but man, if you jump into the space and you're able to take advantage of it, it's a good place to be for sure.
Definitely. I mean, there's so many benefits to real estate. I mean, we both know, and like we've both been like on the brokerage side and the investment side.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, just to summarize, right? Like the tax code is the government's way to drive certain behavior, right? Mm-hmm. They have certain incentives and disincentives to drive that behavior, and there's a lot of incentives to invest in real estate. So
yeah. I mean, I'll remember. So my first year that I sold 50 million, and when you sell that much, you make a little over 7 figures in terms of commission or whatever. And I had another agent of mine, a good friend of mine, who sold more than me. Right, he sold like 70 million that year, and he was crushing it. But he doesn't do any sort of real estate investing. And so I was like, oh man, you get your tax bill yet this year, man? He's like, yeah, bro. And he's like, I had to pay $400,000 in taxes. I was like, oh, that sucks, man. He's like, well, how much you pay? I was like, I paid $3,000 last year. And he was like, what? No way. And he's like, show me your tax bill. So I was like, yeah, man, here it is. He's like, how'd you do that? I was like, real estate investing, man. Like, you can save a lot of money real estate investing if you invest wisely. And he was just so blown away. He didn't believe it. He still hasn't fully committed to real estate investing, surprisingly, but it's all right. To each their own.
Yeah. I mean, it takes some education, like you said. It's not like the real estate agents get handed this guidebook saying like, "Hey, read this." The ins and outs of why investing in real estate is good. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, like you and I, we had to learn just through reading our own books. From like Bigger Pockets or like wherever. Yep. And then like once we saw the light, it was never the same again.
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean. I truly had the poor dad mentality. You referenced the Purple Bible, if you will, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I had that poor dad mentality without even knowing it. I was in the military, planning on getting retirement. I'd have my retirement check, and I truly thought there was like so many dollars in the world, not physical or digital dollars in the world, and I worked, and my time equaled that amount of dollars. And when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you realize like wealth can be created, like you can create money, I was just like mind is blown. And it was like a religious conversion, man. I came home and like a religious fanatic, I pushed it on my wife too hard. I was like, baby, you gotta read this book, like it's gonna change your life. And she's like, you're being a little crazy, like I'll read it, but just slow down. And I pushed it too hard. So for a while she was like very anti real estate because I pushed it too hard, but in the end I think she's gotten on board at this point.
Nice. Yeah. And speaking of that too, I mean, so you've definitely done like many different kinds of like real estate deals, from like obviously like brokering, but then also like buying multifamily, like small and big RV parks, developments, all that kind of stuff. So like, just tell us what kind of deals have you done, and like how do you choose which ones that you want to pursue?
Yeah. There's two ways to think about it. I have on my shelf over here, I have Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, which is a great book. And his whole thought process with the one thing is like focus, right? Be that magnifying glass of light and focus all of your energy on one specific niche, even if it's like super duper focused. That's one way people will do it, where they're like, all right, I know I want to buy a 10-unit multifamily in this county, and that's all I'm going to focus on. And they focus all their time and energy on that. And you can get some great outcomes doing that methodology, but you might need to wait a while because you're so hyper focused, and like you may not see the opportunities as much. I was almost the exact opposite. I was like the shotgun approach. I was like, bring me all of your deals, and I'll see what excites me the most. Like early on, that's kind of what it was. I equated it to like. My mom told me when I was growing up, she was like, date as many girls as you can. That way you know what you like. You know what personality traits are there. And when you go to get married, you'll know you pick a good one. And I kind of felt the same way with investing. I was like, well, let me just see if I like wholesaling. Let me see if I like flipping. Let me see if I like short-term rentals or mobile home parks or multifamily. Because if you don't jump in the water and test it out a little bit, you don't really know. And so that's what I started first. I tried wholesaling. I realized I'm like, man, this is not for me. I did every mistake you shouldn't make, right? Like I focused on building the website, building the LLC, like everything was perfect before I had even like gotten one under contract, and spent all this money and time doing the front end for wholesaling, and then like in the end never getting anything under contract, but spending hours and hours and hours of my life on nothing, basically. And I realized, because in the end I was like, I'd rather just be an agent rather than a wholesaler. And if I find an opportunity, I'd rather just tackle it down myself, or if I need to wholesale, I know how to, but I don't want that to be my main business model. So I've done wholesaling, I've done flipping. That's how I started. Was flipping was my first actual official like real estate investment opportunity. And then through networking, I was able to buy my first short-term rental. That started growing that portfolio. Went to another real estate meetup where I met some other great people who then brought me into the world of mobile home park investing, which then kind of veered off into RV park investing. And at the same time, met some other people who were in the multifamily space doing traditional multifamily syndication. And so that's kind of where I've gotten my feet, kind of my hands dirty in a bunch of different areas. I've not done self-storage yet. We have some storage in some of our mobile home parks, but not like a traditional, hey, this is a self-storage facility. We don't have any of those. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
Nice. So you really just take the shiny object syndrome and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, but it's good though, right? So now I understand with like mobile home parks, I understand what I don't like about mobile home parks. My very first deal jumping into a mobile home park was a 17 unit that I had met the investor who brought me the deal at a mastermind at a belly to belly networking event. Great dude. He was a real estate inspector. He was a home inspector, mold inspector specifically. And so he was inspecting this one mobile home. He gave me a call because he's like, hey man, I was talking to the owner here, and I know you want to buy a mobile home park. And I told him, hey, I got a friend looking to buy mobile home parks. Would you be willing to sell this one? He said, you know what? Yeah, I'm old. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So like it was as simple as that. And so he called me. He's like, do you want to buy this with me? I said, let's do it, man. Let's figure out the numbers. And the numbers were great. But I also found out that we owned all the homes. My partner, when I jumped into that one, he was super hands-on. Really great guy, but he was so hands-on. He was a prior general contractor, which is great for the knowledge, but the downside is he knew how to do everything. So when we had to gut one of the mobile homes to get it ready for a turn, we got quotes to paint it, and it was like $9,000 to paint the inside of this mobile home. He was like, nah, I'm not paying anyone $9,000 to paint that. I'll just go in there, I'll get a spray, and I'll do it all myself. Like, I understand you can do it yourself, but now I feel bad because I'm not participating. So let me pay you at least. He's like, no, don't pay me. We'll figure it out. I'm like, so we just kind of he kept being really, really heavily involved, and I kept feeling bad because one, I didn't want to be heavily involved, and two, I didn't have the skills that he had to do the things he was doing. And so I got to the point where I was like, dude, I think you just need to buy me out. Like, I just feel bad as a partner. And so he ended up buying me out. I still made good money because we had increased the value so much. But I realized management is tough on mobile home parks. And if you're going to own the homes, you have to have some sort of plan to like not be so involved because they can really suck your time. And through jumping into all these opportunities with flipping, I found out what I like and what I don't like with flipping. Mobile home parks, same thing. RV parks, multifamily, traditional long-term rentals. I have some of those as well. And what do you like and what don't you like about traditional long-term rentals? And so, yeah, I've done a little bit of everything, but I think the benefit is now if someone presents me with a deal, that shiny object syndrome, I can see what objects are actually shiny now versus before you kind of get glommed on to like cash flow or like whatever gets you excited.
Interesting. So with that being said, like what have you found stood the test of time almost in your eyes?
I think everything has its season. That's one thing I have learned is it's interesting how these like what comes in waves in real estate. And so like I said, short-term rental, like super duper hot for a while, still a popular investing outlet, don't get me wrong, but it got so much to where anytime there was an area that had good numbers, there were so many investors that would just take over that market, saturate it, prices would increase, and then it wasn't really exciting in that area anymore because there's just cash flow didn't exist. And so I still enjoy short-term rentals. I still think it's a great outlet, but just the opportunities are few and far between, so it doesn't get me as excited. But as far as deals right now, what gets me the most excited is RV parks, mobile home parks. I think gets me the most excited. They offset a lot of the biggest headaches that I have right now in a lot of my investments. One being insurance. Insurance is a massive headache, especially where I invest along the Gulf Coast. Insurance is a massive, and if you're dealing with mobile home parks and RV parks, especially where you don't own the homes or own the RVs, man, you don't really need insurance. You need general liability insurance, but you don't really need property insurance, which is really an expensive thing right now. And then the other piece is interest rates, which may or may not be decreasing. We'll see. But the nice thing about when you're buying mobile home parks and RV parks, oftentimes you are buying it on seller finance, and those terms are completely negotiable. And so, the parks that I've bought have all been bought with seller financing, and regardless of what the ongoing rate is of the day via banks, you can buy them via seller financing. And man, buying a deal with seller financing is great for multiple reasons, but also just because I hate dealing with banks. As much as I can avoid updating my PFS again and updating my statement of real estate owned and them needing the social security of my left leg and whatever, they need every little detail about your life. I understand why, but it does get a little bit cumbersome when you're trying to deal with banks.
Totally, and not to mention all the auxiliary costs and whatnot, attorney's fees for bank and all that stuff.
Yeah, attorney's fees, they have their extra, all their costs. Yeah, it adds up very quickly, for sure.
Totally. And I guess as far as partners, right? I mean, you're talking about working with different kinds of partners. How do you go about finding good partners in your business? Is there a process that you vet them? Do you have agreements, operating agreements that you sign with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never done a deal by myself. So I've always had a partner in every deal I've ever done. I don't know if it's a comfort blanket thing or if it's more of I always like to think of it as I know I'll grow faster if I have other people in my deals with me. And so that's always been my methodology from the very beginning. Early on, in my book, I talk about the investing triad, which is time, money, and knowledge. And early on, I had the time and I had the knowledge, but I didn't have the money. So I was lacking one of the three requirements for an investment. And so early on, I would find partners who would fill that gap of the money aspect, because I didn't have it. And so they filled the gap of the triad. We tackled these deals together. But as my sales grew, as my investments grew, I had the money and I had the knowledge, but my time started to dwindle because I was burning the candle on both ends. I didn't do it. And so I then searched for partners who would be willing to take over the time component of these deals, but I could bring in the knowledge and I could bring in the money. And so that's, based on where you are in your journey, if you're lacking the money, if you're lacking the time, or if you're lacking the knowledge, those are the partners you should be seeking. And that's being intentional with how you kind of grow your partnerships. And every deal kind of had its own partnership, right? Hey man, you and me, Leo, we're going to tackle this specific deal, but over here I'm going to tackle it with Sam, or over here I'm going to tackle it with John. And for whatever reason, that's how we did it. As you grow into the larger deals, the syndications and things like that, the larger joint ventures, you'll probably find a set. You have your crew that you've gathered, on your side, Leo. Once you have that kind of dream team, if you will, the larger investments, it's great to kind of hold on to those guys, because then you're also you're investing other people's money. So you need to have more of a long-term mentality with those type of investments, because people are trusting you with their money for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Who knows how long you're going to hold on to some of these assets. So as far as vetting them though, I don't have a checklist. I have to mesh personally. I have to totally believe and understand that you have a solid work ethic. And it's just having that honest discussion early on with people. I mean, I probably should vet more, but luckily I haven't been burned yet.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of trust, and it's funny that you say that. It's almost like we have to trust our gut to an extent, and people. I mean, it sounds hypothetical when you say to trust your gut, but it's actually through thousands of decisions and data points that your mind has seen, that it just sort of shortcuts into a gut feeling. Yeah. But you having experience with so many different areas, you'll see, okay, this is how you properly just vet someone, just by gut feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can go all day about the power of the mind and how you put yourself in these situations. One of the it's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, which is where the more you experience something and think about something. The classic example is if you buy a new car. You get this new car, you get your red Tesla Model S, and you're like, man, this is my Tesla, my Model S. And all of a sudden you start to see red Tesla Model S's everywhere, because it's popping up in your mind, it's on top of your mind. The same thing holds true when you're trying to find a good partner, or if you're hey man, if your mind is consumed about a specific topic, or if you learn about a new investing opportunity, hey man, I just learned about the Burr strategy. This is crazy. I'm thinking about Burr strategy all the time. as you think about these things, the back of your mind, your subconscious mind, even when you're not actively thinking about it, is like now picking up on these cues for these opportunities. So whether it's like, all right, I really need to like, I really need to find a good partner. Like that's on top of my mind right now. I'm thinking about it all the time. Subconsciously, you're thinking about it too. So you're like subconsciously analyzing people, subconsciously like figuring out what's going on. And I think that's where like that gut feeling comes from, because you put it in your mind, and your mind's kind of doing the calculations in the background while you're living your life. And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I get a good feeling when I talk to Leo. Leo, this could be a great opportunity. Let me ask him some questions, and like you'll validate those gut feelings. But yeah, I totally agree that your body is doing more thinking than you realize.
Totally. And yeah, I know we ran a little bit over time, so just one final question before the closing remarks is, I mean, you've definitely done so much in real estate, and like you know like all the ins and outs, and even like across industries, back in your military pilot days, and we speak about hard work, but besides hard work, was there anything else that you think contributed to your success? I mean, besides luck as well?
Besides hard work and besides luck.
I know you did
Like I
mention
said,
in your book chair flying and visualizing success, which was a really novel concept. I mean, to sit down and meditate on what it feels like to live the life that you want to. And I will say I have tried that, just with my investing as well. Just sitting down and being like, okay, what is it like to own a mobile home park, to manage tenants, all that kind of stuff. So stuff like that.
yeah, I think that like the whole concept of manifesting, there's something to it for sure, especially early on when you don't have much yet to like, you don't have like success to be to I don't know, leveraged in terms of motivation and daily excitement and momentum yet in the industry. And so you need to leverage that power of the mind, power of your gut, power of your body to build these thought processes out. Like I said, I was a big fan of Miracle Morning early on, even though I lost a lot of sleep and probably some years of my life because I didn't sleep enough. It was totally worth it, because every morning you'd start with the acronym that they go throughout in the Miracle Morning, which is, you do some journaling, you do some exercising, some visualization, and one of the things is like the visualization of the manifestation. So I had this vision board that I would look at every morning, and I looked at it for 2 years straight before the house that I moved into now. And the house that I moved into was on that vision board. The amount of money that I needed to accumulate to put the 50% down on the house, because I didn't want to have a ton of debt on my personal house, was on the vision board. The type of car that I wanted was on the vision board. The vacations we were going on, and so like all those things we were able to come true because I'm looking at them on a daily basis. I have like these end goals in mind, and I that's what I'm working toward. You're focused. So there's luck, there's hard work, but yeah, I think having objectives, having goals is super important, man. Otherwise, you may have some success, but like success towards what? Like what are you working towards? And so that was really important for me early on to have those end goals, because they drove me quite a bit. Yeah.
Nice. Love to hear it. So yeah, I appreciate all your wisdom, Matt. I think this has been a really insightful session. Lots of great little nuggets there. And obviously, just to wrap up, how can folks find you? How can they buy your new book, Supersonic Real Estate? Where can they find it? All that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Supersonic Real Estate came out not too long ago. So you can find it on Amazon. Just search Supersonic Real Estate. Supersonic's one word. And if you want to find me, roargardner.com. So ROAR Gardner, GARDNER.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And I'm just happy to connect. If anyone's looking to do deals, looking to connect and just chat, I'm just here to grow relationships, man, and help Leo in any way I can, because Leo's the man.
Appreciate it, Matt. Sounds good. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you next time.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thanks. All right. I think that's stopped now. Good job, man.
Yeah, buddy. Hope you get some good stuff out of it.
Yeah,
I hope
totally.
the upload work.